Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to Rising. What are we doing today, Saagar?
Well, we have an amazing show for everybody today. We have Fred Fleitz. He's a former Trump NSC staffer. It's going to be an interesting discussion there about Iran.
Good
we have
debate
an
there.
aviation expert. He's going to talk about that downed Ukrainian airliner in Iran. We're going to talk about some of the circumstances. He used to work at the NTSB, so he can give us a little bit of insight into the crash investigation there. And then there's some updates in the Jeffrey Epstein case, which are mind-boggling, not that surprising given to anybody who's covered that here.
It's just one thing after another with that frickin' thing.
It really is.
It's
but
hard
of course,
to believe
Krystal,
the official narrative.
There's a lot going on in Congress right now. So.
Indeed. So War Powers Act vote yesterday passed by the House. I mean, look, let's be real. It was mostly partisan lines. There was a little bit of crossover. There were some Republicans who voted with the Democrats, a few Democrats also who disappointingly voted with the Republicans. But look, ultimately, this is more or less at this point an impotent gesture because, number one, the strike on Soleimani already happened.
Right.
And number two, they don't have any leverage or way to pressure the Senate at this point to go along with what they want to do. Whereas before, when progressives were trying to get these types of amendments put into the National Defense Authorization Act, there was actually leverage on the Democrat side. What do they do?
Why would the president why would the president sign this? That's also the main thing. Right, yeah. It's like also like Trump is not going to sign this.
But when you think about like what they've spent all their political capital on and organized rallies around and hashtagged and got trending onto all this energy and attention on, look, it's not an insignificant issue, the phone call with Ukraine and the Russia stuff and Jeff Sessions' job, et cetera, et cetera. But when you're talking about war and peace, and you've already spent all your political capital, and it doesn't seem like you even really want to fight, you're just going to like throw up an impotent gesture for history's sake or whatever, it just shows you how bankrupt the priorities of the Democratic leadership have been this whole Congress.
It's because they're cowards. Every one of them are cowards. They don't ever want to vote for a war ever again after what happened in Iraq. They are
That's
happy
bipartisan, we should say.
Exactly. And they want to delegate that authority to the commander-in-chief, no matter who it is. So that way they can scream about how Libya was terrible, but, you know, how would they have voted on Libya?
Right.
And I would love to know that. You know, I thought Matt Gaetz actually had, you know, very interesting comment on the House floor yesterday where he said, I represent the most members of the United States military in this body. And I think if you're going to send those people to war, you should vote for it. And he's a Republican. He voted for the War Powers Resolution. And I think that there is a growing small contingent in the Republican Party. You have the libertarians who've kind of always been there, Mike Lee, Rand Paul, now Matt Gaetz. There are, I think, a few other Republicans that also crossed the aisle in order to vote for it. And more, again, people are waking up to that. To the Bush and the Obama years, we delegated massive amounts of authority to the commander-in-chief for the reason that our lawmakers, who are constitutionally obligated to take us to war, didn't want to do it anymore after the toxicity of the Iraq war. They didn't learn that maybe you just don't vote for the war in the first place.
Right,
yeah,
how about that? But then they're afraid that they'll be painted as soft on terror and all that stuff. That's a very real risk. I mean, Trump is going after Bernie right now in that very direction. But I think you're exactly right. Look, that Iraq war vote is still shaping our politics, and rightly so. Because you look back and you say, okay, at this moment, when lives were at stake, when it mattered, when it was politically treacherous to go against the grain of the national security establishment, what did you do? And we know exactly who stood where.
We do.
Who helped further the lies, who helped carry water, who got us into the worst foreign policy blunder of our generation, who did that and who stood against that, we know. And so, yeah, most of these people, I mean, there are a few courageous people that you have to really give credit to who have actually been truly committed to taking that power back and having an accountability within the Congress. Most of them, though, they're happy to not have to deal with it. They're happy to not have to take the tough vote ultimately.
But what are they happy to talk about? Relative, right? What have they been beating the drum on? Impeachment, the Mueller hearing, you know, Jeff Sessions' job security, endless press releases about this investigation. And what do we know now, Krystal, is that Mitch McConnell says he has enough votes in order to proceed with the Senate trial without any of the Democratic gains. We don't even know if those, you know, articles of impeachment are going to be transmitted. Nancy Pelosi basically smacked Adam Schiff and Dianne Feinstein yesterday for criticizing her holding of those articles of impeachment. So the thing that they have gambled their entire political capital on in Washington, their mandate from 2018, is a failed impeachment process, which is not even going to go, A, is not going to result in the vote that they want, but B, will not even result in the trial that they promised the American people.
Well, you know where I stand on this.
Yes.
I think she should take a hard line and say,
Just
look,
say
if
no,
we don't get the president, we forget it, we're moving on.
Because it's going to be a disaster.
And these people in the Senate who are like, oh, let's get on with it.
Right.
I'm like, why? Why are you so in such a rush? At the same time, who could ever have predicted that this might interfere with the Democratic primary in a negative way? Who could have imagined that this would be the case? Now you have Cory Booker, Elizabeth Warren, and others running to reporters and saying, like, this is not good for us. Here we are in the final stretch, was 24 days now to Iowa, with a Senate impeachment trial looming, and some of the top contenders, especially the top two progressives in the race, Warren and Bernie, set to be taken off the trail at maybe the most critical time in the race. I mean, again, insanity. We're supposed to believe that Nancy Pelosi is some brilliant chess player.
Strategist.
She's got this handled. You didn't see this little bitty problem coming up here?
No, they didn't. And first of all, I love that the graphics team chose that photo of Cory looking very sad.
He looks very sad.
I mean, you know what? It serves you right, Spartacus, because you're the one who pushed this kind of crap for years, and you're the one who has held this whole moral line about the White House. Well, it turns out that these things are going to hurt you. And all these members of the U.S. Senate, it's the greatest gift to the Buttigieg and Biden campaign that could ever exist, especially Biden, because he can be like, oh, look, they're demonizing me in the Senate, and all of his opponents are off the campaign.
Well, and that was my progressive friends who are more supportive of the whole impeachment thing than I am. That was the case they made to me. It was like, well, at least it's going to be bad for Biden. This isn't bad for Biden. He gets to be on the trail doing his whole thing. He gets to be elevated in this whole process as the true foe of Donald Trump. And the reason he's coming after me is because I'm the one he's really afraid of. This doesn't hurt him at all. This is nothing but good for him.
No, not at all. All right.
All right, we're going to tell you what's on our radars. That's next.